Let's get this meeting started. It's 7 o'clock. I'll call to order the meeting, the October 23rd meeting of the Waxahachie Groves Planning and Zoning Board. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Chair Lip.
Here.
Vice Chair Crawford.
Present.
Board Member Corney. Not here yet. Board Member Harris.
Present.
Board Member Grace Joyce.
Present.
Alternate Member Veronica Close.
Here.
Alternate Member Burns Guillaume is not present.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the minutes.
No minutes.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the agenda. We just sort of get stuck in things, you know. Rob Crawford moves to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Grace Joyce. All those in favor, all opposed, agenda is approved. We're first meeting as the LPA, dealing with land use. And turn it over to staff now. Jim wants to make a couple statements, and then we get into the meat of the issue.
I just wanted to give a little introduction. We have two items on the agenda tonight. The land use plan amendment application, which we will consider as the local planning agency, and then a companion rezoning, which we will reconvene as the planning and zoning board. Both items pertain to the Day property, the 9.3 acres on the southwest corner of Okeechobee Folsom. And before anybody brings this up, I just want to mention a couple typos that were the biggest little typos I've ever made in my life, I think. And it was made in several places, and I just like to run through to show you where the corrections should be made. And I'm going to be referring to the small numbers at the bottom of the agenda package. First is on page 3. Under item E1 at the bottom, floor area ratio, I have 0.74, that should be 0.074. And then on page 4, both number 2 and number 3 have 0.74 and 0.074. Page 9, that occurs in 3 places. Item number 1, A1, the end of the second line, 0.074. A2, in the first line, 0.074. And A3, first line, 0.074. And on page 17, it occurs 2 places. Under special policy 1.15.3, 5th line down, 0.074. 1.15.3 trends 1, first line 0.074, and then 2, same thing, 0.074. So I apologize for the mistake, and that's obviously a huge difference in the amount of space that would be allowed on the property. And I just wanted to, we've sort of come up with a new format for our agenda packages, and I wanted to briefly go through that, because we're probably going to be using this same format from now on. The new format has a brief 1 to 2 page agenda item report, and those we have on pages 3 and 4 for land use plan amendment, and 5 and 6 for the rezoning. We have a staff report on pages 7 through 16, which is the staff report for both items. It covers the staff report for the land use plan amendment and the rezoning. And then the actual proposed future land use amendments themselves are on pages 17 and 18. and the zoning amendment is on 19 through 21. So it's a little bit of going back and forth, but it results in a much smaller, more brief agenda package, and I think if we can follow the flow through it tonight, I think you'll see that it's a much better format than the past. Okay, that concludes my introductory comments, Mr. Chairman. I believe the way we would like to handle it tonight is to have the applicant present first, followed by the staff presentation and recommendation.
Okay. So this is on the land use,
Yes.
Kildare, so you'll be presenting the first on land use change. Lawrence Corning is present. We can make that.
Okay,
Take it
thank
away.
you. Kieran Kildare. And now that we've had that tenfold decrease in intensity by going maybe 0.074, I'm at a loss for words, but we understand what he meant even in the original. You all saw me in October 2011 when we came forward with the day petition, which is located, I think you all know now, on the southwest corner of Okeechobee Road and Folsom Road. And at that meeting, we had a proposal in front of you, and this was the proposal as far as the conceptual site plan that you saw at that meeting. And that was for a total of 59,416 square feet, which was an FAR of 0.15. And how it was made up, to refresh your memories, and I'm going to move off this, but just so you remember what happened at that meeting, is a portion of the property had a CLO land use, which allowed for up to 0.2 FAR, and a portion of the property was a CL, or retail land use, which allows 0.1. And when we merged those portions together, we came in right on the middle at 0.15, which is equivalent to the 59,000 square feet. At the end of that meeting, the members who are here, and many of you were here because I remember you all only been 3 years? 3 years since we started. There was a recommendation of approval that went forward to the city council. It was a 3-2 vote, the recommendation. And there were specific recommendations of the approval, and one specific one was that there was a large area of pines located right about where this building is on the site. And we were asked to modify the site to do a tree preservation on the only portion of the site that had some significant tree vegetation. We went forward to the town council with the 59,000 square feet, and at that meeting, while we were able to move forward, the council members indicated that they felt the intensity of the property was too great. So subsequent to that, we came back for the second hearing of the town council, and we reduced our square footage to 41,000 square feet. So we are now at 0.1 FAR. And so we went to, instead of having a blend of office and retail land uses, CL and CLO, we now just said we will come in as CL land use on the entire site at the more restrictive FAR of 0.1, which was 41,000 square feet. The project was denied, did not have the vote that would move it forward, and subsequently there was litigation. And litigation is ongoing, and it's on hold at the moment. And I'm the planner, so I won't try to get into the litigation. But what did happen is that as part of the litigation, there was a mediation hearing, and I attended the mediation hearing with Mr. Day and Mr. Day's attorney and the town and the mayor's attorney. And it was a 6-7 hour session with most of the time us in separate rooms and the mediator moving from room to room and talking back and forth. And by the end of the day, there was a draft settlement agreement that was agreed to by Mr. Day and was agreed to by the mayor. Now, as you all know, the mayor can't unilaterally change land uses, so ultimately this process then had to return through the process of a filed application. And what's contained in the agreement is that the land use be restricted to a maximum of 30,000 square feet. So it's a further reduction, not only from the 59, but from the 41 now to 30,000 square feet, which is the .074 FAR that's referenced in your account. And it says that within 120 days of the date of the mediation hearing, and we're probably about 45, 50 days into that now, that the land use would need to be changed to CL and the zoning changed to CL. So those are the two petitions in front of you tonight. So the schedule in order to meet the settlement agreement is that we are here tonight, and then we will go back to the town council on November 4th and November 18th. And if it's approved, at that point, the project would be approved with the conditions that are being recommended to you tonight for both land use and zoning. This is a conceptual site plan which is allowed for and actually encouraged at the land use level, but there's still a site plan level that ultimately would have to come back at the end of it. So the new plan, to give you a visual comparison, and I guess, Mr. Harris, you're stuck in the worst possible place, but I have to be facing that camera over there, is that this was the plan you saw back in October 2011, and this is the revised plan at the 30,000 square feet. One of the differences with the conceptual plan is the two-story office component is gone. Now, there could be office within CL, but there's a recommended restriction that it be one story only. There's also a recommendation that it has to be part of the, let's hold this up easier. So, I'm still okay?
You're good.
Okay, I moved too far this way, then I'm out, but this kind of shows it to you. The pine area was surveyed in the last thing, and you can see this big green area here where the pines are. So that building was moved over. Retention was increased to meet retention, but the intent was always that there'd be a green space along Okeechobee, which was in the original plan, and large areas set aside for green space within the overall center because of the lowered intensity. So that's where we are today. I mean, ultimately, I know you're a recommending body, and the ultimate decision has to be made by the full town council. But we're all moving forward in good faith that all the time spent at the mediation and the settlement agreement gave an intent of a way, and the litigation, which is on hold, would then be withdrawn. And that's my plan of version, but you'll be the town attorney here, so I misspoke on anything, I'm sure he'll help
Clarify whatever the board needs clarified.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Should we hear the questions from the board now, or Jim, do you want to?
Well, I think if you have any questions for the applicant, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, before we go, I just want to make sure we have on the record who's the voting members tonight, because you have 6 now.
Right.
Sitting up there, and I know how there's a rotation on the alternates. I just think, just to be clear.
Just to be clear, Veronica Close is the alternate tonight, and she can ask questions and can, make her points, but cannot vote.
Yeah, I just want to.
Or second or propose a motion.
I just want to make sure that's clear. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Before we start, can we ask a question about a clarification for the statement?
Sure.
Can you clarify for us exactly what the settlement agreement is? The impression I'm getting is that we are required within 120 days or whatever it was to approve this plan, so I want to make sure I understand.
Well, I think what he meant by approved is that there's a 120-day window for us to go through this process, and if it gets approved, it has to be done within that 120 days. There was without getting into the detail of the mediation, there was an interest in Mr. Day's part of having some end game to the process, so that they filed an application and abated the lawsuit, that it would move forward on a reasonable schedule. So that was felt to be a reasonable schedule to process this through the town's hearings in the town council.
And is this a new hearing, or is this a continuation of?
This is a new hearing, this is a new application, that's correct.
Okay. Any questions from the board to the applicants? Carrie, I'll start. The square footage that you had there on our agenda pack had right around 25,000 square feet.
30,000.
Well, when I added all the numbers up, it ended up at 25.5, unless the numbers on my agenda pack were different than
They should add up to 30,000.
30.
Yeah, I know.
And the other thing was on the drive, is that a drive-through restaurant up there? in the
There's-
upper right?
There's a provision that would allow for a drive-through window, your CL code allows for it. And with us thinking of something like a Dunkin' Donuts type use, and so what we did was we provided a portion of this building to allow for that and to allow for all the stacking. Again, bringing it in from the back side of the building so we'd not be running cars out onto the road. And it's a permitted use in your CL.
Have you seen the stacking problems with the Dunkin' Donut on Forest Hill in Wellington?
No.
It's a nightmare if you're trying to.
I mean, I'll take a look at it and see how.
Yeah, look at it in the morning because during rush hour.
Particularly if that's where the connection would be, because that little box where you, because that was my question.
To get to the drive-through, you'd have to turn at this entrance.
Yeah,
Turn at this entrance here, so this technically stacks through, but then your rules have, then you would come in here and come out through there. So
Right.
your rules have a minimum of 9
but if you were
stackings.
gonna do a cross connection to the Red Barn site, where would that take place?
I don't know.
Okay,
Probably back in this area here
Okay.
to get it off the road.
Because I was thinking, you see where your label is though, Carrie?
Yeah.
I was thinking that's where it was, and I was like, that is gonna be a nightmare.
Yeah, the problem
Okay.
with doing it there is I think we really need to do an alignment
all right.
that brings you to the south side of the building.
Okay, that was what I was gonna suggest, because it implies that that would be the location. That label right there
Oh, I see. Yeah,
leads you to believe that that's where it would be, which did make sense to me.
okay, that label was our buffer area being 15 feet wide.
Okay, because I thought it said something about a cross connection there
There's
too.
a condition that we provided, but it's not specified by
There,
us. law.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Dennis, may I ask a quick question?
Veronica?
Is this a quasi-judicial hearing?
This is not.
And the other thing is.
There will be a
really
quasi, I'm sorry, there will be a quasi judicial for the rezoning, but the land use is not. And that occurs at the town council meeting.
And should we switch one of our members around because he can't see the exhibits?
I was wondering if how he was, especially you, Mr. Harris, if you would like to turn
I
around.
looked at the map of the agenda package, you familiar with it?
It is a copy of the site plan.
Okay. Any other questions, Robin?
Maybe this is directed at town planning. Where did the one-story restriction come from?
That, we tried to carry over the conditions of approval that we had in the first staff recommendation, to the extent that we could. We took that recommendation to council, when it went to council as a CL only proposal. And like I said, we're trying to carry forward the conditions we had already recommended.
And I'm still wondering where that came from even before that. Because my concern, it's a double-edged sword, and not that anybody would want to build 2 stories, they could build one, but if it was encouraged, sometimes it's, my concern is it's nicer to have, you know, you go up a little bit, because like this property next door is nice with a 2-story office. So I'm just saying, we're encouraging a sprawl instead of saving some green space, not that we need to tell somebody how to do it, but it's just a concern. I just didn't know where it was coming from.
Yeah, well, anytime we approve an amendment, with conditions, it's always possible, but the next applicant that comes in is going to be looking at previous applications, and we're concerned about compatibility with the residential areas beyond the frontage along Okeechobee. So we don't want to try to say, plus with this small FAR, there's going to be plenty of open space. So compatibility with surrounding uses was, and also with not setting precedent for potential future applications.
Okay, let the record reflect that member Burns Guillon, alternate member Burns Guillon is now here with a new beard. Yes, great.
I have a question for Jim. On the findings and the recommendations as it relates to the deed restriction, I remember from the previous meetings, there was concern about the land use amendment and the rezoning because there were members of the community who were worried that it would, you know, tend to then march down Folsom. You know, once you get this corner done, then it would continue on. And is it possible that we could restrict it? I know we're going to deed restrict this piece of property as it relates to the square footage and allowing the increase if we increase the square footage. Is there also a way to protect ourselves so that it's only for this 9.30 acre site? So that, you know, later on someone doesn't come in and buy it, and then the next thing you know, they unify the property and say, well, now I want to, you know, do a land use and zoning on this piece because it actually is one PCN number. And I'm just a question, just thinking ahead as far as, you know, our constituency in the community, providing a level of comfort.
Well, you're saying that the PCN on the property to the south is the same as this one?
No, but I'm saying in the future.
Yeah.
You know, let's say hypothetically speaking, someone comes in and they buy the piece to the south and then they unify it. Now you have a piece of property that has 2 different land use and zoning designations, and they come in and they want to change it. Makes it difficult for us to say no because.
Are you talking about changing this one or changing the one that they, like, if they, because
The
you're
property
looking
to
to
the
go
south.
south.
Say the one from the south.
Yeah, I mean,
Folsom Farms.
could we be that specific? Because we're being pretty specific here, saying, you know, we're going to allow them to increase the FAR on this piece of property if it goes up along Okeechobee Boulevard. Well, if they unify the pieces to the south of here, now it's included because it's along Okeechobee Boulevard.
No, that wasn't the intent of that.
I know it wasn't the intent.
We can clarify that with the language in the deed restriction, and if this gets approved, we can work with council and make sure, because the issue is along Okeechobee itself.
But you see where I'm going with
I
this.
understand that, and that's why it's good to have, you know.
Okay, because you're gonna say like the depth of this property is 516 feet at this point, but if someone comes in and purchases and then unifies, now it's double. Now you've got 1,000 feet in depth. And it's still, well, this property fronts Okeechobee Boulevard, but the depth is now 1,000 feet.
But the FAR's not, could possibly be 0.074 on the whole thing.
Doesn't matter, Mike. You still now have a parcel of land that could potentially have twice as much commercial.
Well,
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that would have to go through a separate land use amendment process too. That's separate land, because the land that's south of it is right
I
now the land
understand.
use, and that issue is going to be addressed during a separate process.
Just thinking
And
of added
right, I know, and
protection.
we've
So
got-
why wouldn't we do it? Why wouldn't we do
I
it?
will talk with the attorney and see about
Okay.
whether we need to do anything more specific in that. But there is a need to do something in the whole area of Okeechobee, and that's something that's gonna be working on a parallel track.
I
very
understand that,
quickly.
and I'm not
Hopefully we can
trying
build
to,
something into that too.
not trying to beat this dead horse, but we've been trying to do something on Okeechobee Boulevard since
I understand.
And here we have an opportunity to protect ourselves
Understand?
and the community just by putting a little bit more language in there that says this particular parcel of land, this particular 9.30 acres, to the depth of 516 feet, whatever it is.
Okay.
We're just adding just that little bit extra protection, which I know myself and some other individuals in this room would feel comfortable. I'm sure that Mr. Day would not object because he's here for his parcel of land only and not.
Would it be
lease
appropriate to
himself.
have a condition?
Well, I'd rather it not be, because I haven't had the opportunity to really speak with this.
Alright.
But I do understand the concern, and I mean, I'm not gonna put him on the spot, but if Mr. Day's attorney is here, he is listening to the conversation, and if this is going through the process, I think we'll be able to address that issue.
Well, in the land use plan amendment, we're gonna have a legal description, which is gonna legally describe the parcel. Doesn't that cover what you're saying?
I'm not sure.
Well,
I guess what she's
I
saying is.
understand what what the intent is.
Yeah.
You know, you wanna make sure that there's no way
Solidify
around
it.
what we're to this.
So it's this piece only.
Mhm. Got it.
Okay. Okay.
Lawrence, do you have anything you wanted to ask?
No, I don't have the legal knowledge, but if you have an advantage of being on the corner of two collector roads, and then you have unity of title or whatever she's trying to allude to, where the parcels are together, would that advantage of being at the corner of two collector roads then convey to the,
but
I think that's what,
that's essentially what she's saying.
yeah, that,
Burns, any questions that you have?
I do not.
Veronica?
Yes, I do. I have some questions I'd like to direct to Jim. There was some information supplied to the town council when we considered this last. Was there some reason why you didn't include it in this? Because it was pretty interesting. One of the pieces was about the land, the uses along Okeechobee.
There was no reason why I didn't do that. I mean, that wasn't part of the application last time. It wasn't part of the staff report last time. That was a special request that the council asked me to inventory all of the properties along Okeechobee and determine what the floor area ratios of all the structures were along Okeechobee.
So that'll come up when we look at a comp plan change on Okeechobee.
Yeah, what, I guess, thanks so much for mentioning this. We're working on land use plan amendments, two land use plan amendments, text amendments. One for the Okeechobee Boulevard corridor and one for the Southern Boulevard corridor that we have. We're ready to bring them to PZ. And they're going to talk about a whole series of issues, including floor area ratio, types of commercial connectivity, policies for Okeechobee Boulevard itself. And that, I don't know, that might be the appropriate time to look at that information.
You're preparing those now?
Yes, they're ready to go as soon as we get a consensus on staff, and we're also going to probably bounce them off council members individually to get their opinions.
Does it include recommendations about changing the future land use map or the zoning?
It doesn't have recommendations on specific parcels, but it provides guidance for application to us.
But that's gonna be separate.
Yeah, just separate.
Yeah, I understand. I'm trying to determine whether
That's
there's
fine.
been any formal policy or any change in the future land use map
No.
going away from rural residential along Okeechobee?
The language that we're preparing would allow for some change, yes.
But there's been nothing, there's been no formal changes, you still have the same comp plan you had.
Nothing's happened yet.
It's,
Okay, in the comp plan, can you identify anywhere in the comp plan where it ties Okeechobee in with commercial?
The comp plan is relatively silent on that issue on both sides.
Both sides of the one.
Yes, commercial or no commercial. It is silent, period. The only reference to anything other than commercial is within one of the plans that were done. I think it was the neighborhood plan or a pre-comprehensive plan that said, it says in effect, Okeechobee Boulevard shall be restricted to low-intensity residential and non-residential. That's the only written statement we have in any document.
Okay, in the comp plan under the future land use element, there's a statement, the vision for the future of the community. And the quote is, Loxahatchee Grove will protect its natural environment and rural character in the midst of an urbanizing region. The town will continue to be a rural residential agricultural community, etc. Are you familiar with that statement in the comp plan? There's also a statement about State Road 80 Southern Boulevard Access Management Study. And it says that the town is, I'm quoting from what I have here, and perhaps you can confirm whether that's in there. The town is planning to concentrate any new commercial development within the town between East Citrus Road border to border and State Road 80 Southern Boulevard in order to minimize impacts to residential areas. Is that still in comp plan, that statement?
I'm not sure if the comp plan says concentrate, but there is language in the comp plan that talks about allowing commercial along southern border to border, south of Citrus.
Well, I'm reading from the future land use element that is dated, it says adoption February 2009. It's got 81-10.
Oh, that's correct.
And also a policy 1.1.5 that says the town shall also consider compatibility with adjacent zoning, food plats, and existing land uses, including occupied residential areas. That in there, okay. And under policy 1.1.8, number 5, according to this document, says maintain specific regulations to restrict the types of non-residential and non-agricultural uses allowed and promote the rural character through design. Familiar with that statement? Okay. And 1.1.12, the town shall base all future land use decisions upon and consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan. And 1.2.1, I'm sorry, 1.2 objective, the town shall support development of rural style commercial center along the Southern Boulevard corridor.
Yeah.
And then there are 4 policies underneath that as to how to do that. So I'm not misquoting here. And 1.11, objective, the town shall work towards the elimination of existing land uses which are inconsistent with the town's development pattern and not compatible with the proposed future land uses, right?
Yep.
Okay. 1.11.1, policy inconsistent uses are hereby defined as any uses which are located on site where they would not be permitted by this comprehensive plan. I just want to make sure I'm quoting correctly. 1.11.2 says the town shall adopt and maintain land development regulations which protect the rights of property owners to continue non-conforming uses, but which at a minimum provide for the termination of such rights upon the abandonment of a non-conforming use for an extended period of time. And 1.12.3, policy, the town shall encourage development of a rural-style commercial center along the Southern Boulevard corridor to provide a center of accessible shopping, recreation, and employment opportunities for Loxahatchee Grove's residents. You're familiar with that one?
Yes.
Okay, and then of course it's rural residential all along Okeechobee now? Future land use?
Yes, it is.
Okay. On the west side of the property, there's the Red Barn, and then in between the Red Barn and this property, there's a commercial, some buildings that I would call commercial.
That's all part of the Red Barn approval.
Are those
All-
building?
Yeah, all of those buildings are part of the site plan that was approved for the Red Barn property.
Do you know when that approval was?
Pre-incorporation. I'm not sure exactly when it was.
Okay, and were those buildings considered conforming?
At the time, yes, because they were approved by Palm Beach County.
But were they approved, I mean, were they conforming under the county's code?
Yes,
So the county allowed commercial development?
on that site, yes.
Okay. Let's see. And has the town council taken any action to change the future land use to commercial? Have they approved any changes to commercial? I'm assuming not, since it's all still,
Okeechobee,
yeah.
no, they have not.
Okay, and immediately south of the property is rural residential?
Yes,
Okay, and it's a nursery, I believe?
yes,
And is that allowed under rural residential?
yes,
Okay, and immediately north of the property across Okeechobee, rural residential, I presume?
right,
And it's vacant, right?
right.
Okay, and there's Folsom Road, and then adjacent to Folsom Road to the east, there's a canal maintained by South Florida, by the Waxahachie Groves Water Management District, and then a rather high berm,
Yes,
just gotten a lot higher.
right.
And then that's the town municipal boundary, right?
Yeah. Followed by a residential development with 5 units an acre.
And to the west, are all of the uses along Okeechobee conforming to rural residential?
All of the churches were approved, I believe, when they were unincorporated. And churches were allowed in the AR district in the county, but in the town, they have to be institutional. Which the land use changes were not made.
So what's the ramification of that?
Well, in terms of land use, they would be a legal non-conforming use. That were approved by site plans by Palm Beach County, which are recognized by the town.
Okay, that's.
I'll just add to that, the mulching operation at the southwest corner of F in Okeechobee is still there. And the large truck and mulching operation on the northeast corner of F in Okeechobee are still there.
Are they not conforming?
I use the word illegal, but I think so.
They're illegal?
One of those,
But are the
one of those is
best
subject to
rural uses around?
code enforcement action, or has been resolved through code enforcement. I'm not sure. I don't work on code enforcement, but I know it is.
Okay, that's it.
And chipping and mulching is a permitted use on a 10-acre parcel.
Those are 10-acre parcels.
I know.
Lawrence?
Given what she said, how did we even get to this point of having this kind of plan?
Well,
I mean, she kind of walked us through it, I mean, so I just, how do you?
well, there's nothing in the plan that specifically states commercial or no commercial on Okeechobee. So we had an application, and we evaluated the site in terms of the policies that exist in the comprehensive plan, in terms of.
The one she just went over.
Yes, in terms of the surrounding uses, we came to the conclusion that a site which would currently allow 2 single-family residential units that's bordered on the west by an intensive commercial use, on the west by a residential community at 5 units an acre, or east side is 5 units an acre, on the south by a commercial nursery, and kitty cornered by a school. It is a 10-acre parcel that you can do 2 units on, compatible with that surrounding area. And it's also the only, at the time, was the only property in town that was bordered by 2 paved roads. One a designated urban collector, and the other a designated local road in the town's comprehensive plan. So if there was going to be any commercial on Okeechobee, we came to the conclusion that this was the best site. And there's nothing in the plan that prevents it, and language in other elements of the comprehensive plan, including the housing element, which state promotes the creation of jobs. This would create some jobs, and it's compatibility with neighboring land uses is really the overriding theme of the land use element.
Which is, I think, why that was developed first, Red Barn, and then that was left.
Ron?
I want to ask you a question. You stated that property to the west was an intense commercial use. How could it, then it's the legal non-conformity, is that correct?
Well, yes, because it has a site plan approval that predated the incorporation of the town.
So do we consider legal non-conformities when we determine whether something is compatible?
Well, I'm looking at existing land use. It's an existing commercial development that's actually developed at a higher intensity than we allow.
Right, but once it's done, once it's no longer being used, it has to be terminated.
But your land use isn't gonna go away.
Yeah.
The use on the property may go away, but your land use is gonna remain. That's not gonna change.
Yeah, it's got, I suppose if it,
But, I'm sorry, what's the land use on the Red Barn?
the land use on the Red Barn under the town is R5.
Right, so,
Yeah.
right.
But it's an existing commercial development at an intensity higher than the town.
That's right, so it's a legal nonconformity,
Right.
but the overarching land use is rural residential. And once it's terminated, that use is terminated, the future development, until it's changed, has to be along the guidelines of rural residential.
Yeah, that's true. You can look
Did
at
they,
it.
excuse me, did they go through a planned development though? I thought that was a planned development when that was approved.
It is an MUPD. MUPD zoning and site plan, because it was commercial land use when it was in the county.
So we created the nonconformity.
Yeah.
Right, for sure.
That's an
So
issue
we
for-
downzone the property.
That's an issue for another day.
Ay, ay, ay. Oh, brother.
Signed them up.
But it's used, but the use of it and the future land use map,
It is legal, I mean, it's there legally. Let's,
Okay.
Yeah.
right.
it's
I mean,
there
they're
legally.
permanent, but it's
It's there
there.
legally.
Unlike the junkyard on Deep Road.
Ay, ay, ay.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Anything you need to add to this, Jim?
Well, if you can take a look at page 3, the staff is recommending approval of the application, subject to 3 conditions. The first of which start on page 3 and the second 2 on page 4. Recommending approval of comprehensive plan amendment 14-2, subject to the deed restriction, which we previously discussed, which would limit the maximum development on the property to 30,000 square feet of low-intensity commercial uses, provided that intensity could increase if the town council grants any property along Okeechobee a higher floor area ratio. So if the town council approves 193 at .1, the FAR in this property would automatically increase to .1. Second, that a conceptual site plan reflecting the 0.074 FAR shall be approved as part of the initial rezoning process. And number 3, any increase in development intensity above the 0.74 as permitted in the first one.
0.074.
Did I say 74?
You did.
Oh, I got that in my mind. Sorry about that.
Anything above, here to correct you.
Anything above 0.074 as allowed in condition A1 will be processed through a site plan amendment.
All right, so we have recommendation for approval with 3 conditions.
Staff discussion, board discussion.
That's what we've been having.
Oh, I thought you had questions.
No.
But
Well, yeah,
then we
yeah.
generally talk amongst ourselves, right?
So I'll bring it back to the board now before we have a motion. And I'll start with Rob. Rob, did you want to add anything here?
Again, I'm just curious, and I'm just curious, why are we recommending on the .1 that they automatically get the increase if anywhere else it occurs?
It was as part of
The
the
negotiation?
conversation, right, the deed restriction to 30, but if, say, there was a change in philosophy in the town, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, that they didn't want to be hamstrung by the deed restriction from taking advantage of that should the winds of change come. That's really all that is.
Because I wonder, I think anybody would be up for that anyway, so I was just wondering whether it just.
Well, because there's a deed restriction on it, they didn't want to have to come and ask permission to release the deed restriction at that point or whatever. I think it's just there so that, again, like I said, if there's a change, they could then come in as a site plan as opposed to request to release a deed restriction.
I'd like to follow up on that, if I may.
Okay, Brian.
Why wouldn't they have to come in for, are we obligated to give the maximum FAR for any project?
No, you're not obligated to give them the maximum FAR.
Right, so why would we automatically give them the maximum FAR?
Well, you're not. You're giving them the right to ask for that. Or you're asking.
Then I would suggest this might need to be rewritten, because it seems to read that this restriction would automatically increase.
Yeah, I mean, the restriction would go up to whatever was permitted. But that doesn't mean that they're going to come in and ask for that. And it doesn't mean that the site would accommodate that. But the deed restriction would be adjusted to say you did say the town council approved something half a mile down the road at .10 FAR. Then they could look at their site, there's just .774, and say, well, we can come in and do something here to get up to .10. or we could come in and get the .90, because it doesn't, anything bigger than that doesn't work on our site. But,
And you're fairly confident that the council would have the right to consider whether to increase it from this to the maximum without automatically having to approve it?
well, no, we haven't prepared, the deed restriction's only there right now for the 30, but yeah, if the town council approved .10, he's gonna have a right to come in and ask for .10, just like anybody else who could come in and ask for .10. You know, but it's gonna have to go through a process at that time.
Lawrence?
Was there a traffic study on this?
Yes. And that showed that it met the, in the town's comprehensive plan, it needs to look at the 2035 plan of the county. And it met the standards of the 2035 plan. When it comes back in for site plan, it's going to have to go through the county's traffic performance standards review. And if it meets that, then it can build the .074. If it can't, then either some improvements to the road are going to have to be made, or they're going to have to reduce their floor area. So there is another step of county traffic review on this project when it gets to the site plan.
And they have the four-laning sort of coming on deck for Okeechobee. Are those standards also, are those standards aimed at F-level service and crawls and all that for the, when you add Minto and GL and all?
Well, no, I mean, at the time of this study, no. We can't assume Minto until Minto's approved.
But you're already talking 2035 or?
Well, when the traffic study was done, the 2035 study was done, and Minto was not part of that study.
Oh, right,
Approved.
okay, yeah.
Grace? Carol, sorry.
Did you have something else?
No, okay.
Grace?
I'm still just hung up on that little Okeechobee thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Burns? Keith?
Thank you, Chairman.
I thought you said hairless. I don't know why. I'm sorry.
I resembled it.
Mr. Day came to us 3 years ago, time that he has lost. He is being considered for a project significantly less in impact. It is on a property that no further encroaches into the rural aspects of our town, as the Great Barn sits west of him. In the first application, there were property owners along Okeechobee that spoke in favor of it. I'm of the opinion that we should consider this in a favorable position.
Thank you, Keith. Lawrence, you have something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, when I was listening to her almost lawyerly rundown of the comp plan, I had brief glimmers of hope that something positive would happen in the town that relates to the reason why we incorporated in the first place. And part of that hope would be to have to bring something into the plan that would prevent his type of planning and the type of planning that is done by those folks next to the college. And when he talks, yes, it's next to Red Barn and it's sort of isolated. It is, you have another town which is more dense. it sort of gets, it's similar to that misuse of the urban, that new urbanist malarkey that is being pulled up at Calorie Church in terms of surrounding. So, and I know you're working on moving down Okeechobee to kind of prevent some of this, but I don't, at our entrances, this is the first thing they see. You know, so that begins to define who you are. B Road, that's a major connector across to Wellington, which is kind of why those folks did their little thing there. And that's an entrance to the town. And on one hand, you're trumpeting ag and beautiful rural vistas and this and that. On the other hand, somehow she's reading that list, and on the other hand, you can get guys like this coming in and doing this kind of work. And we've seen this kind of work, at least, you know, 3 generations or whatever. I've seen it since my whole life. You know, just watching this metastasize around, you know. So, I mean, I could read the same comment I wrote in 2011. It really would not benefit the argument anymore. But I don't know what you as professionals can do with professional help here to the right of me to fix it. I know where you're going, and I'm really appreciative of where you are going. And I could read some of the comments that these people have said in 11 and 12. I don't think it would help as much. There's a sense of helplessness, you know, and they come in before you and they read your own work, they read your own content, they read your own material and say, look, based on this, folks. And you give them, you know, in these charrettes, it's not just the owner that sits at the table. You're sitting next to these guys who are arguing right then at the time you're creating the rules in the back of the Monopoly box. You know? So you're setting yourself up for failure. And I really don't know how to cut it off at the pass. You know, they're doing it in the ag, they're doing it here, they're right where we're collecting water, we're running out of water, they can't wait to build there. Down where we're growing food, they can't wait to build there. They can't plant in California because there's no rain. I mean, you're down to food and water, and these guys are still carrying the day. So I really don't know. Something has to happen somewhere. While it's here. You know.
Our phones have names.
You're asking Siri for some help?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. The Oracle of Delphi, hopefully. I don't
Dennis,
know.
may I just,
Yes, please.
if he's done?
Yeah, boy.
Okay.
Cool.
If I could just comment, you know, and I know that Mr. Horny has a bunch of comments, and there's a lot of them from me, I'm sure, on there. And Veronica did pull out a lot of stuff from the comp plan. And this is serious. I mean, the town is getting ready to look at Okeechobee Boulevard. And while everything is being forced onto Southern, you know, I do have an opinion that some commercial is not a bad thing on Okeechobee Boulevard. And I do think this is an ideal location for a commercial site, but I do think it needs to be contained. I do think we need to protect ourselves so it doesn't bleed down Folsom, which could definitely happen if we don't protect ourselves, or possibly even jump over Okeechobee Boulevard. We have, and Lauren said it, this is the entrance to our community. I live north of Okeechobee Boulevard. I like the idea of having a gateway into our community. This is an opportunity. And I appreciate the fact that you saved that slash pine stand. I truly, truly do. That meant a lot to me. I don't think this site plan is there yet. I think there are some things that you took away from the first one that really need to be incorporated in this second one, which we can discuss at another time. But we have an opportunity to tell people who come into our community what we represent on this site. And a house with a bunch of trees may not necessarily be it. Having all of these strip centers down Southern Boulevard is not Waxahachie Groves to me. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but that's not what it means to me. Having churches, having junkyards, you know, having these mulching plants, that's not Waxahachie Groves to me. I've been here for 25 years. There are things that represent Waxahachie Groves to me, and whether you like it or not, Red Barn is one of those things. My kids grew up getting star fruit from Red Barn. You know, ice pops on a summer day. They would go to Red Barn and get that. Sorry, but that's what they did. My kid took dance lessons there. We bought paint from there. That's what Waxahachie Groves is to me. So we have an opportunity to protect ourselves at the same time as taking a plan that is going to represent ourselves in the future. It's going to happen. We really do have an opportunity to be a part of this. It's 30,000 square feet, which is better than it was. I'm not so sure if there really is a need for office, but how great would it be? Maybe a Dunkin' Donut. Your kid could go have a job after school in the community that they live in. My neighbor's daughter just got a job in Red Barn. She's like thrilled. She goes to school, she goes to work, she never leaves the community. That's the way it used to be when I grew up. I just think that everything should not be on Southern Boulevard. You know, I live 2 miles north and a few miles west of this location. I really think this community is more than just Southern Boulevard. And we have to look at all of our residents and where we live. And Okeechobee is our opportunity. Again, I think we need to contain this. We really have to protect what's going to happen if this does get approved. How, you know, who else is out there lurking to see what's going to happen? You know, and who's the next, you know, this is the low-hanging fruit. Who's out there trying to get the next bite at the apple? So we have to be very cautious. But I do think this is consistent with the comprehensive plan. I do think it's about job creation. While these may be non-conforming uses, they're not going away. We may have, you know, screwed up when we gave it a new land use and zoning. No one's done anything about it yet, but I think someday someone might. So that's just, that's my 2 cents. And I agree, I do think that we should recommend approval.
You know,
Look, Lawrence?
yeah, my understanding is he also built Red Barn. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So, on one hand, he built something that is iconically here, and now we have this. And there are a lot of people talk about the benefits of connectivity. So one has to ask themselves, why do the people at Red Barn have no desire at all to be connected with this? So that's interesting. One is iconically Waxahachie. The next is, well, we know what the next is. But Red Barn, you know, where connectivity is a good thing, Red Barn doesn't want to be connected. So I think that's sort of telling.
Could you clarify? What
Well,
do you mean by not
Well,
connected?
you know, in Florida you drive into one little plaza, then you have to drive out on the main road and go into another little thing and drive out. I mean, it's really
Well, they're proposing to connect it.
exactly, but the other people don't want to be connected to this.
Is that in the record?
Well,
I don't know if it's in the record, but
But
I
I think we need to be careful when we come in with stuff that's outside the record here. This is plus this is a, right here, a land use amendment.
yeah, well, I
And a
don't, you know,
rezoning, the site plan's gonna come in, and that issue of
Well, I suppose you'll-
connectivity and access and circulation's all gonna be addressed then.
yeah,
yeah,
I was-
well, I can address
I'm
that a
just
little
saying,
bit.
you know.
We had a condition
you can ask him later, I
in
guess.
the first application that said you shall have connectivity with the Red Barn. And the applicant went to the Red Barn, as far as I recall, and inquired about connectivity. And at that point, the Red Barn wasn't interested. So we backed off on the wording a little bit, saying, make another try at it. Not you shall have, because it takes two to tango.
Yeah.
When it comes to connectivity between properties that are owned by different parties. So we're saying that you need to go try to do it, but we aren't saying you shall do it because it takes two.
Would have,
It's
you know, like
conceptual
Lucia's
when-
mentioning the donut shop being like really a heavy traffic situation, if something like that were modified, maybe they would be more amenable,
That could be.
could be.
Conceptual and reality are two different things.
Approving this concept versus,
Having conductivity and.
Connectivity.
And, thank you. In any type of urban affair, planning, development, there's conceptual ideas and foundations for design purposes. The wish list. Reality is different. When you're dealing with multiple property owners, it may not be able to follow suit with the conceptual ideas. So in this case, the connection, the interconnection, so that both properties do not have to go out on the Okeechobee. It's a nice conceptual idea, but it appears that the reality is that that will not occur.
yes, that's possible.
Okay, I think we've kicked this around for the land use portion. Jason, do you want to offer a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the request. Where is it?
Page 3 and 4.
Page 3. Bob?
3 and 4, page 3 and 4. Recommend approval of case CPA-1402, subject to the conditions as outlined in the staff report.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion proposed by Grace Joyce, seconded by Keith Harris. And one more question, then we'll have a vote.
Yes, I have a question and a statement. On number 2 of that part of the motion, it says a conceptual site plan shall be approved. That means we're obligated to approve a site plan presented to us? Can we rephrase that to say that we're obligated to approve a .074 as the site plan goes through the process, or something like that? Do you understand what I'm saying?
As part of the
We included
rezoning
as part.
process.
Yeah.
It's not really, because it has to come back for final site plan approval.
But this says as part of rezoning, so we're not
Yeah.
even there yet.
Yeah, well, what that refers to is page 21. We're saying that there's going to be a conceptual site plan as part of the rezoning process that has to be substantially complied with in terms of uses, access, and be somewhat consistent with this plan here. This is not the final site.
Okay, I see what you're saying. It's not a mandate.
Right.
Okay, and the comment that I'd like to make is, to me, this is the first step of a more urbanized, more intense use along Okeechobee. And it may be appropriate, it may not be appropriate, but I think the community has the right to make that decision. And so I'm very concerned that we're gonna do what I would call spot zoning, only it's the land use plan, without having any overall concept of what Okeechobee's gonna look like. For example, when you talk about cross-access easements, it may very well be that we would want to take something on the site plan and have them set aside a connector road in the front of the property. And at some point in the future, when the property next door comes in for a site plan approval, they would be required to connect that. But I'm just concerned that we're going to approve something that, without having the benefit of the overall comprehensive look at that area.
Yeah, well, like I said, we're bringing some proposed amendments to you very soon, maybe even next month.
Well, can you tell me whether these conform to that proposed amendment?
Yes, this particular project would. But it, based on those proposed amendments, or what we've written so far, this would not set a precedent for similar amendments on down Okeechobee, just based on this face, it has to meet other criteria, and we are proposing to limit the square footage on Okeechobee to a certain number.
Okay. We're gonna have a roll call on this, or is this
I would
a?
suggest a roll call.
Okay, let's see, clerk can please call the roll.
Okay, I'll start with Vice Chair Lip.
With who?
I'm sorry. I'm tired.
Rob just got a promotion.
Crawford.
I was trying to avoid what I would. I would vote in favor of the motion, yes.
Okay, so you're voting, okay. Now,
I'm in favor.
okay, both of you. Board Member Corney?
I think based on how staff is going and changing, I'm gonna do something different and vote yes, because I think there's a change in staff and, yes. because
Oh,
I
yes,
think- I think
okay.
there's a future.
Board Member Harris?
Yes.
Board Member Joyce?
Yes.
Okay, that's
Okay.
approved.
You okay?
I guess now we're adjourning the LPA section of the meeting and reconvening as the Planning and Zoning Board. And I'll turn this back over to staff.
Okay, this is the companion rezoning for the land use plan amendment that was just proposed, and I really hadn't planned on having a presentation on this. The agenda summary page is on page 7. And page 7, and we're recommending approval of the rezoning from AR, agricultural residential, to commercial law, CL, subject to
Was there seven?
conditions of approval that start on page 9, that would be on page 9. And those conditions essentially are that the development will still have to go through traffic performance standards reviewed by the county at the point of site plan approval, building height limited to 1 story. Rural vista guidelines shall be incorporated within the design of the development plan. Number 4, pursue on-site connectivity with the red barn. And number 5, contact Comcast to see if that's feasible and desired for a trans bus stop on-site. They'd be required to perform a vegetative survey, including /pine inventory and /pine preservation program. Number 7, that a plat will be filed with the town. And finally, prior to submitting a site plan, the applicant would have to meet with the town's RETAG committee to discuss the feasibility of incorporating any equestrian facilities within the development. On that basis, where you recommend approval.
Okay, Mr. Tilday, do you have anything to offer this?
No, I guess just to say, it's been said before that the final site plan, there are many items that need to be addressed. That has to be in agreement with the conceptual plan as we've kind of laid out tonight, which doesn't mean it doesn't adjust. But that'd be another hearing.
Okay, is there any anything different that anyone wants to bring up on the zoning center? Which one?
The equestrian path along the north side so they can connect up to
Well,
PG or full
Well,
school.
we don't have any specifics in there. We wanted the applicant to meet with the RETAC committee to discuss,
Some of those.
some things that the RETAC would like to see and discuss the feasibility or not to get it done.
Jim, would it be appropriate to look at the two site plans now, just to point out there was a couple of things that, like, to me, that seemed like a downgrade on the second plan as from the first plan, or is that just premature now?
I would recommend we just
Okay.
do the rezoning and then, you know, and then when they come in with this site plan, that they're gonna have to deal with your issues.
Just want to give them a heads up, but if you
Or
don't
if
think
after we
it's-
finish this, if you wanna give them a heads up, you can.
Just-
But I'd like it to be, you know, like maybe as part of board comments, maybe just a non-binding.
No, I didn't want it to be
advice,
binding
But I
in
didn't
any
want it to
way.
be mixed in with the
Okay.
rezoning.
All
That's all. I
right.
don't want it to be
Okay,
confusing.
it was just
with rezoning.
FYI, that's fine.
I have a question.
Ernst?
I didn't want to be redundant in terms of the person I've asked, but, and we may have discussed this earlier. In terms of, you mentioned earlier, and that perhaps doing this would perhaps open the floodgates and allow more, even commercial local zoning items to come in on Okeechobee Boulevard. My question is, how do you address that question? What is different, or what's the standard that you're gonna have so that someone, the next person that comes in to want to do something like that will have a standard, and they can't refer back to this, that you did this, and now we wanna do this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, the comprehensive plan is pretty silent on what we should do on Okeechobee. So this was a unique site, and looking at compatibility issues and the appropriate use for the site, we think that this site has certain characteristics that no other site on Okeechobee has. So another site couldn't come in on the coattails of this site and say, okay, we're exactly like this one. You gave them the approval, so we're asking for it too. Number two, as I mentioned, we're working on a set of comprehensive plan amendments right now for Okeechobee that we're going to bring back to the planning and zoning board, which will have specific criteria in it, which will give you a much more firm ground or basis to evaluate future applications, and will also give property owners much better direction in terms of what they can ask for in the future. So the fact we're coming back with amendments as soon as next month that essentially will prevent this as being used as the first domino.
Jim, will we have an opportunity to like workshop that or something before we actually are gonna have a vote on it?
Well, that's certainly okay with me, I guess. We're trying to get this to the council as soon as possible, but if, I would say you certainly would if you're willing to have an extra meeting.
Why are we trying to do it as soon as possible?
Well,
It is
It's been in the pipeline
almost
for a long time.
2015.
Yeah, this all goes back to a moratorium that was imposed by the time of 2012. So, it's time. But I mean, certainly if you wanted a second meeting, we could do it. And whether or not we had a workshop at the next meeting and then another PJ, so we have to talk about that. I'm not sure. It's not a decision I can
Yeah, the last Thursday of November.
I'll be shopping.
make.
Actually, isn't
What's unique about this
Thanksgiving?
site?
It's Thanksgiving on what, it's December 22nd.
Okay.
Jim,
Last would be 29th.
what's unique about this site? You said it's unique. What's unique about this?
Okay, well, first of all, the uses that surround it. You've got the Red Barn on the west. We've got 4-lane urban collector on the north. We have a designated urban road, local road on the east, and that's the only designated urban local road in town. And it's paved, so we have 2 paved roads on 2 sides. We have commercial nursery to the south and a residential residential development across Folsom is 5 units an acre, which is 10 times the density, residential density allowed in the town. I know no other property in town that exhibits those same characteristics.
Sure.
I had a suggestion on the recommendations. On number 4, it says incorporation of on-site connectivity shall be investigated at the time of site plan approval. I would recommend that the word would be shall be investigated prior to site plan review. And I would have that same recommendation on number 5, would be prior to site plan review.
Thank you, Rick. That's a very good catch. Any other questions? Speak now, or whatever one repeats.
These are basically the same recommendations
Yeah.
as the previous ones, okay?
Right. I just have one question, Jim, on PDF page 14, which I think the little numbers at the bottom of the page would be 13 to 21. On the bullets, underneath the proposed amendments, CPA 21402, the 3rd bullet down, just could you explain that? Restrict the non-residential intensity, i.e. 0.074 FAR to less than the maximum defined. That's what we've done, right?
Yes, I'm just saying that this is more than consistent, I guess, if you will, with the maximum FAR that's currently allowed in the commercial range.
Somebody wants to think up the motion, go ahead. Yeah.
Recommend approval of planning and zoning case number 14-02 with the conditions as outlined by staff.
As amended.
As amended by the board.
Second. Okay, so we have the motion from Grace Joyce, seconded by Keith Harris. Any other discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, I'm going to start at the back end of Keith Harris,
Yes.
Board Member Joyce,
Yes.
Board Member Corning,
Yes.
Vice Chair Crawford,
Yes.
and Chair Lip.
Yes. If the board wouldn't mind, at the last county planning commission meeting, Lisa Amera gave a very nice presentation on the county changing their definitions of commercial low and commercial high. And it was a 47-slide presentation. I gleaned out about 10 that I'd like to put up on the board just to share with you and share with staff. So if maybe Bill could get that turned back on.
Can we move on to board comments?
Yeah, that's sort of board comments, I guess.
So, were you gonna want to talk to them about the site?
Yeah, I did, but do you want to step out in the hall?
Yeah.
Go do that real quick?
I don't want you to.
It'll be quick.
That would be a part of
Yeah.
communication.
Oh, okay, all right, I guess
So,
we'll do that.
you wanna do it on the record
Yeah.
right after, you know,
This isn't gonna take long.
Do you mind reading? I mean, seriously, it's quick. It's up to you.
What's that?
Probably
go ahead.
another.
Go ahead.
It's really quick. I mean, I didn't really, when I saw you pick it up, because I was hoping to have it.
make sure for the minutes it shows that Grace Joyce is gonna give him a comment
I
on
don't
the
know if
site.
anybody else wants to. One of the things,
Can you let the camera see it?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, let's be clear what we're doing as a board. We're gonna, just
just
for us in the record,
Of
she's
course, you
gonna
know,
offer
I
some
want
board
to,
comment
you
on the
know,
site plan.
refrain the right to actually look at the site plan and give more comments, but the first thing that I noticed, you know, this really great feature that kind of came around then went away. So that was a really nice
I don't
thing.
think that was intentional.
Okay, you know, everything that you had over here that created this really cool space went away, so if you put that back, that would be really great. Because this kind of made it,
Pedestrian.
yeah, this looks like a retention pond, where this looks like an amenity, you know? You see how it just, so as soon as you put that up, I was like, wow, that made a huge difference. Yeah, just the connection, I mean, you, other than that, you know, and I don't know, I know that there's a sidewalk out here, and I'm sure this is all gonna connect in there. But I guess we'll look at it
I
more.
don't understand exactly.
When it came, yeah, because this is beautiful, you know, this little feature out here, which I was assuming, we had talked, remember, there's gonna be this really beautiful bell tower or whatever with this town logo and the sign and all that. But I'm sure we'll get more when we talk about it.
No, but it's good you bring that, because that was part of it.
Yeah.
This was. Weren't even discussed.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, it's just, seems like a bad location for that, but I don't know where else you could put it. Would you guys even consider making these like some kind of a, you know, interim use in the meantime instead of just a, you know, like some. And I know now's not the time to plan the site plan, but I'm just saying. Green markets, you know, if it had a shelter on it, would be kind of cool. This would be, you know, I know when my kids were in school, we were always looking for places when they were in bands, had fundraisers, Christmas tree sales and things like that. And there's never a place. Yeah, okay, that was the first thing that caught my eye. I was like, what? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Congratulations. Halfway there.
Yeah, I'll give you,
Probably create one.
give you my card.
Council meetings.
Oh, well, that's right, I really can't talk to you about this anyhow.
All right.
But,
If you would like your name, for me, I'd like to have a card to lose your stuff. Oh,
Okay, guys, thank you, Grace, and Mr. Kildare for getting that. I think that's a good idea with keeping the pathway.
Oops.
here, just write it here in your
Because I
company
want to
and
get
what you're doing for
the staff and the board
Good night, ma'am.
thinking about.
Good night, thank you for coming.
the
Hope everything wasn't too painful.
Establish
Wow.
the.
That's
I recruited him, I did for a driver.
That's an absolute thing to do.
And now just narrow it down to commercial low and commercial high. Where we are in the county, there's 631 acres of commercial low in the urban suburban tier. That's what we're in before we became a town. And we'll go over some of those in a minute. And the thing that you'll see in a minute is why commercial low designations no longer works in the county. a commercial neighborhood, and that's right at the corner of Drexel and Belvedere. And you can see that it's, it's right near the neighborhood, the aerial where they're showing you the houses and everything around. But we've all been by that more times than I care to admit. But that's what a commercial neighborhood, would look like, and it's probably some of the stuff that we're going to be seeing along Okeechobee. This is commercial low, which absolutely floors me. This is the big box Target at the corner of Land Tenant. But because it's FAR, is in that same construct as commercial low. It's commercial low, but it's a big box store located down here in front. Because when you drive by there, you see there is no gas station or anything else on here, but eventually, that part of that will be filled up. So those are some of the pitfalls we need to look out, and this would actually what commercial low looks like. Sort of like what we're gonna be seeing probably, down at the, down at the college. I hope they change it.
It looks almost exactly like that.
This is in Jupiter. The county didn't have anything to do with this, but this is what a lot of people envision as commercial low. Still looks intense to me, but it's more of not
But that
strip
looks
center.
better than the other one.
Yeah, when you go back to that, yeah, that one does look better.
It's just because the roof is a different color.
And then maybe that's it. So the compatibility of uses, when the county is going to be looking at establishing, FAR is not going to be a big part of what the use of the land is going to be. It's going to be more adapted to trips per day. So if you look at a medical office, it's going to generate 36 trips per 1,000 square feet. Whereas if you look at something like a convenience store, it's going to generate 738 trips. But a gas station is 168 trips per day per fueling station. And there's typically anywhere between 6 to 10 fueling stations at one gas location. And Lisa confided in me one of the things that the planning commission is probably going to see next year is there at the corner of Seminole Pratt in Okeechobee. There used to be a fruit stand there in that 2 acres. There's somebody, talking about putting in a gas station there. And that's going
So
to
who prepared
really,
this report?
Lisa Merrill.
But I mean, who did the analysis, traffic analysis?
County
They did
planning.
it in-house?
Yeah. The next thing is when we look at the actual size of square footage and number of trips generated. So commercial generator with an FAR of 0.25, the square footage and the trips per day. But then when you add up all these smaller uses that are really in commercial low, we end up with 70% less potential square footage, but 250% more trips generated. So as we move forward, when looking at our own commercial low and our own commercial
Did you know that,
development.
Jim?
Not to that extent, I didn't.
I'm sending Jim the whole 47.
We may not actually see that thing next month, are we?
And this is a sort of a startling thing, is if we look at a residential 12 development, 12 units, up to, and then a 30,000 square feet, 47,000, 45,000 square feet, and then 13,800 square feet, and the number of trips generated from gas stations, convenience stores, car wash things. It really becomes something that we.
Can you go back to that for a second?
Yeah.
Is it saying that if you have residential 12 dwelling units an acre, you have no trips? But if you have 30,550 square feet commercial development, you have that many trips?
It's, if we're taking the residential 12 unit as the 0 point, in other words, it's going to have trips. It's going to have probably 4 times 12. It's going to have somewhere around 50 trips a day. But we're going to call that 0. So that in that, as you go up.
That is fascinating.
to the higher intense uses, even though it is commercial low.
Wow.
The trip city generation becomes tough. So now, just looking at the gas station, we all know where this is, at the corner of,
Oh, yeah, by the Walmart.
by the Walmart,
Yeah.
the Citco, down in Palm Springs, just off Military. This is the gas station, this is State Road 7. So, that's separated, because when you look at the community back there, the residential community is pretty far away. But then you get to this place on Wallace Road, and North Jog, where the gas station is, they have this berm built in there in order to keep the residential community separated from this is I think a racetrack. And this is what it looks like when you're in the community. I want to avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have a wall, build a wall in our community just to separate a gas station or whatever development, from the community. So that's basically it. I just wanted to go over the high
That was
points of that.
fascinating.
Because I think it's fascinating as well, and, it's
Wow.
stuff that we got to think about as we
Can you
play.
email that out?
I'll send it to staff, and they can
Yeah,
get
they
it out
can
there.
find out, that's a good
That is
idea.
something. Wow.
Okay, so I have a stupid question. So are you telling me that the zoning commercial low is inappropriate, what you should be looking for is type of structure?
FAR.
FAR is
FAR
inappropriate.
is out of whack because it's commercial low at that target,
Right,
but it's on 33 acres.
but it seems like that you've
Yeah,
got.
and that's what the county is, the county is going to be changing their commercial high, commercial low designations based upon trips.
Well, I was gonna say, so it's changing
Yeah,
from square footage
Yeah.
to trips.
yeah.
Makes
But
more
it's,
sense.
it's square footage anyway. But a medical office building, at a
They
thousand
can only turn
square
over so many.
feet. Yes, Lawrence?
Tim, there's a question for, would form-based planning help? I mean, were you taking that, they did that rural architectural sort of quickie book or something that would sort of form, massing and the form-based planning help versus this type?
Well, I mean, I
Is
think
are there any other solutions,
I think that's
any other
something-
tools that could help you avoid?
Well, I think what Dennis has is a good idea. I think that we can maybe use a combination of FAR and then take some of those high trip generators and say, you can't have those here. So
Yeah.
have the.
But the
FAR
question is, depending on what it is that you want there.
Yeah,
Obviously, you don't want a gas station, but there may be a use that you may want there
right.
that might be a high.
And that, well, yeah, I mean, we can look at the trip generation by use and go through that and see if there's some that we want to eliminate right
Yeah,
off the bat.
that's right, that's a great idea. That's a really, really good idea.
Well, one of the things, I know some people have talked to me about maybe a car wash somewhere in those Orchard Road.
Yeah.
Well, just drive
That's
to
what
the
you have the
canal.
kids in high school for.
Sounds like a great use for Southern Boulevard.
Yeah. Any other comments from the board?
Now, horse trailer wash might be a different thing.
Anything?
That's what the band kids are for.
Okay, staff, when's our next meeting going to be planned for?
Well, right now, it's set second Thursday in November,
Okay.
and we do have a couple of items.
And this will come to the town council on November 4th,
First reading.
election day.
Election night.
I'd recommend that some
I'm
of us
actually
be
gonna be
there.
in Washington.
I'll be there to voice your opinion, your comments.
My real opinion?
With locking this into.
Great set.
Some of the-
Yeah, please,
Some
please.
other things, just to be sure that the council is familiar with that point. Any other comments from anyone? I will forward this on to Janet, she can send it out to the commercial workers.
Great.
The only would it be more advantageous that you just move as quickly as possible with your thoughts on Okeechobee and then come later and get it in place and then work on refinements later? Or rather than us work it over, or, I mean,
Well, I mean, it's gonna have to go through you, whether or not we have a workshop on it. I mean, I can try to give you as much time in advance also to look at it individually and
is speed help? I mean, is speed critical in terms of protecting ourselves in this situation? Yes.
I think
Against
it's-
who?
Well, against further deterioration.
No, but seriously, are there applications pending out there?
not
Okay, so,
and
They're getting a Folsom?
yeah, that's more importantly, no joke.
there was a land use plan amendment and a rezoning on Southern Boulevard directly to the west of the Drysdale property that we looked at before, but that was withdrawn today. So
What about the dueling banks? Is that still
Banks.
on Southern Boulevard?
I'm not even sure where that is.
It's right next to the park. It's where they were gonna give us 2.5 acres for a gazebo.
Okay, that's not in process. Right.
I know, it was, it got stuck in the, we haven't gotten our thing done yet, so it was sort of stuck. I'm happy to announce that I talked to a physician group that's moving into the building across the street from this.
Oh,
It'll be
awesome.
the first floor. They'll have a fairly large family practice, I guess it's called.
Yeah, that's one that's moving from the hospital.
Yeah.
Site, yeah.
And good to see that. Also, if anybody doesn't know, the dedication groundbreaking for the college is November 7th. Going to be barbecue served. The parking for that's going to be at the church just west. And then they'll have shuttle buses to bring folks over. If you don't have the invite, I think Janet probably has it, can email it out. There's an RSVP on there, and that's on a Friday.
Yeah.
I have a question about that. I saw the flyer, and I'm hoping that the building is not indicative of what's going to be.
I said the same thing. I said, boy, I
Because
hope
there is
that-
no way
I
that would
haven't
be
seen the
considered
flyer.
conforming with rural guidelines.
I actually sent them a bunch of pictures, and this is more rural.
That's the thing, once we approved that, they had the right to do whatever, right?
They're bound by the state.
Well,
Their conditions included reference to the rural vista. I'm not sure, they came and they gave a presentation to the council on it. And I'm not sure, but I think that the building they presented the council differed from the architectural, the postcard.
It
I'm
was
pretty
even
sure.
suggested in that workshop that it was different and they were going to follow
Yeah.
rural.
Yeah, 'cause I
vista
remember,
guidelines.
yeah.
So,
How's that then?
So this was, if I remember correctly, the building was a high polished
Yeah.
glass facade,
But I didn't see the flyer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think they did say, council, that they were not, that was not what they were doing. I
They were
think.
more indicative of their other campuses.
Mhm.
Both planners have
It
mentioned.
looks like a 1950s McDonald's.
Is Folsom, they both have expressed concern. Is that something that we should be doing also along with Okeechobee? Some kind of.
Or just make sure that it's not. Be very specific that we're not gonna do it. I think that's more not to do
Yeah, I
it.
mean, commercial limited to your east-west.
But I'm really serious about the depth, though. We need to be very
That's frontage
clear
on-
about the depth.
You don't have to protect Folsom, you don't have to do something along Folsom.
well,
If you protect the depth from Okeechobee, the frontage line from Okeechobee, you protect the depth back, that will protect Folsom. Because if you can only go 500 feet or whatever that parcel depth is, 516 feet from the frontage line of Okeechobee, then that's it, that restricts it.
Because, the way that we have identified the Okeechobee corridor in the current amendments is the current depth of the lots, the front of the children.
But, I understand that, Jim, but as soon as you buy the next lot, you unify it,
Yes.
now the depth has
And
been
we can-
increased.
We can adjust that, I think that's a simple adjustment to the existing depths.
I'm wondering if you ought
To the maximum of 516.90 feet.
We already have to show up on
And
that.
they're pretty uniform.
Yeah, yeah, yes.
It would be appropriate to adjourn now, since we
Yeah.
have people getting up and ready to leave.
I have
You
to
mean
go
you
watch
adjourn
University of
already?
Miami, Virginia. on TV. I haven't looked through it. Please, make me sicker than I am.
Tom.